What's up, everybody? Let's talk about Kirk Cousins. Michael Lombardi has said in multiple places, John, you listened to him on the podcast. I didn't hear that. I heard him on Pat McAfee say, if you call the Minnesota Vikings about Kirk Cousins, you can talk to the Minnesota Vikings about acquiring Kirk Cousins. His contract expires after the 24 season, and they aren't going to extend him. So Lombardi's logic was, this isn't the future of their franchise. And if you have a quarterback who's expensive and isn't your future, you're going to be open to trading him. Then he listed like Thielen. He listed a bunch of other guys too. So if you told Kyle Shanahan right now, Kirk Cousins is available, would Kyle Shanahan entertain that idea?
I think that by the end of the day on Friday, once they get information on Brock Purdy, if Brock Purdy's out for the season, I think 100% they would be sniffing around. If Brock Purdy everything's going to be fine, they expect him to be full go by the beginning of training camp, by the season and back by training camp. I think the only way they would be interested in that if they could get him at an incredible discount in terms of a trade, right? It wouldn't cost them anything. Because I do believe, I listened to Cousins on with Bustin' with the Boys.
Yeah.
He's a pretty high-level guy. And I do think he's really changed the trajectory of what people think about him around the league. No one's ever going to view him probably like Kyle did several years ago. But I do think his respect level has dramatically jumped up of a guy. If he's your starting quarterback, you can win double-digit games. Because even last year, remember, their offense was really good as their defense was historically poor. So back-to-back seasons, and really for like 4 straight years, he's been really good for them. Like, one thing that's been justified since that whole marriage broke up between him and Washington, Cousins was the winner. And the football team Commanders, Redskins were the losers. Right?
Yeah, I mean, we're going into year 6. They're still looking for a quarterback post Cousins.
Yeah. So I would say Cousins has established himself. Now, one thing they asked him was about his status as a player, not relative to the rest of the league, but like, are you going to retire? Is it something that crosses your mind? And he brought it up, not like they figured out after the season they're definitely playing next year, but like it's something him and his wife talk about it. And then I immediately Googled him, like, how old's this guy? 34, will be 35 in December. So he's a little older than you think, right? Because when Compton asked him that, I'm like, God, this guy 31 years old and he's balling, he's making money. So he's closer to 40 than you probably realize. But yeah, I mean, I think the Purdy situation, I think the compensation, not his contract's his contract, but like what would it cost to trade for him, would definitely be something they would entertain. Like that's more interested to Kyle Shanahan than the whole Lamar Jackson, the hoops you'd have to go through to acquire picks and pay the $230 million. Just easier to deal with a guy that makes way less, who's under contract. You already know.
Yeah, $15 million guaranteed salary this year. 31 is his cap number. 31. $30 million guaranteed salary in 23.
He's a UFA in 24.
Yeah, for some reason his contract was voided in 24. So I don't know if they have I don't think there's a team option in 24. So he signed a 2-year.
He's had an extension.
He added 2 years to what was 1 year. Now, like, all of that sounds terrible until you tell me it's Friday afternoon and we don't know about Brock Purdy's situation. Now, the complication is if Brock doesn't get Tommy John, or I guess it's the way it's the simple answer to this: if Brock doesn't get Tommy John, you don't entertain this, right? Because Kirk Cousins last year was 29 touchdowns and 14 interceptions. Brock was 13 touchdowns and 4 interceptions and basically 6 starts, 6 games, right? 5 starts plus the Miami game. So here's what I know about Kirk. Like, I know what Kirk's numbers are going to be every year. We'll see what Brock's career turns out to be. If it's anywhere near that, then it's an incredible career. It may not be 13-4 through half a season, right? It may not be 26-8. Basically, Cousins touchdowns with less interceptions. We don't have enough body of work on Brock to know exactly what he would be. But even if he were 90% of Kirk Cousins next year in terms of production, for
less than $1 million.
Yeah, I mean, for the percentage, it's just you would not even consider it. And then you add to it, you think you might have something here in Brock, so you gotta you have to see it through.
This is only on the table with the potential serious injury of the elbow. Non-injury, it's a non-starter. But here's where it's on the table with if the injury and he's out for the season. And again, the Niners, it's not like we're not talking a lot of compensation to trade for him. They don't have it. They don't have a first-round pick. They don't have a second-round pick. If I get him for like a third and a fourth, am I entertaining that? Something in like, yeah. Because Kirk Cousins gives the 49ers a better chance to win in 2023 than Trey Lance. That's not even debatable. I don't think anyone with a straight face can debate that. The Vikings just won 13 games with Kirk Cousins, right? I mean, what the fuck are we talking about? And I know you're not saying that, but because that would be a talking point. Why wouldn't you just roll? The Niners aren't in development road. That day is over. Like the Jets. No more developing Zach Wilson. We're trying to win now. The Niners are winning now, but they need a guy that knows how to win now. Like they're not, and the players are speaking to this, right? It's not, these aren't opinions from people that just talk. This comes from the organization and the players. They spoke last year. Now, OTAs, whatever, yeah, anything's possible. You can let a guy take all the reps. I don't care. Neither does Kyle, whatever. But when it comes to week one, they're trying to win 12, 13 games. Anything less than, I would say, like 11 is a major disappointment. And we'll get into the division. It's division champs back-to-back. Like these are the goals, right? And then be healthy to make our run again and put ourselves in a better situation. I think what Kyle would say is we want the home game for the NFC Championship game. Like that was a disadvantage going into that game. And when did it happen? He had mentioned this maybe at the end of the year press conference, but like that Chiefs game when they get their ass kicked, he thought like, could this game cost us the playoffs? And ultimately, do you know what it did? You could argue any game, the Chicago game. I mean, there were other games, the Denver game cost them the 1 seed, which is a big deal when you're talking about places like Philadelphia, right? So it's not as big a deal when it was the Rams 2 years ago. But I would say even healthy, that's a huge disadvantage for the Niners, an advantage for the Eagles, that home road split, right? So like these are the goals we're talking. The expectation is sky fucking high. And I am not some Kirk Cousins fan in terms of never was banging the table. I didn't want him here to begin with. He has vastly improved. And given the Niners situation, I would rather have Kirk Cousins this season in 2023 with all the everything around him, given that you don't have to give up any of these players, than Trey Lance.
Yeah, there might have to be some financial considerations with Cousins too, right? Given the amount of money that he makes.
They might want Trey Lance, given that what's his name, their general manager was here, right? Quessy?
Yeah, they might.
Help them reset their cap.
Yeah, any conversation.
Would you do? I'll give you a hypothetical. Would you do Purdy's out, Trey Lance, and a third for Kirk Cousins?
And you're saying provided you can find a way, you're gonna have to find a way. You might have to. Do you have to extend Kirk in a weird way to move his money around or something?
None of that. No.
Yeah, I mean, if you told me Brock Purdy's out,
we're not doing like a 2-year, $67 million extension.
What I'm saying is just the amount of money that he, his cap number is $30 million or whatever it is. So, now what is that? Is it only 15 in a trade? We'd have to look at exactly what his money becomes. But if you're asking me if Brock Purdy's out
separate
for the year,
the money, it's not going to hinder your cap.
Yeah, if Brock Purdy's out for the year, you have to ask yourself 2 questions, which you just answered. Are you in win now mode or not?
Yes.
And do you still believe in Trey Lance or not? That's a harder question to answer. I think how is there anything above my head that I can touch? Right. But so I think you'd have to consider it in that sense. The other thing is you don't need to winning your division and winning the Super Bowl are 2 different things. Obviously, the Niners have proven they can win their division. They have not proven they can win the Super Bowl. The division is, I'm not going to say falling apart around them, but in a state of disrepair. The Seahawks, for the time being, are all in on Geno Smith, which we know is he's not a good enough quarterback to beat the 49ers. Now, maybe they draft a quarterback, but that quarterback likely won't be good enough to beat the Niners defense right away. The Rams are not, quote unquote, bulldozing their house. They are remodeling. That's what Les Snead said. And Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, and Matthew Stafford are weight-bearing walls. Again, this is Les Snead talking. Maybe he recently did a remodel and all this stuff's on his mind. anyone who's watched HGTV knows you can easily move some weight-bearing walls if you want to put in a nice big wood beam or something. And I don't know if you saw Michael Lombardi before Les Snead denied the rumor that Michael Lombardi started when he said that the Rams have called teams about Stafford. Before Snead had even said anything, Lombardi said, and I know they're going to deny it, but they're lying. I used to lie about it. I know it's true. You've called teams. And then you got the Cardinals. Who knows? So, just to illustrate your point, like, it's not worth walking a tightrope here and playing with fire when this division, it would be a major failure to not win the division this year, given the state of these other teams at the moment.
Yeah. Are we diving into the division right now?
Well, were we going to do that in a Lamar video or in this video?
Yeah. Well, here's the thing. This isn't about the division as much as it is the quarterback play that's now cost him 2 years in a row. Self-inflicted 1, and 2, Jimmy was injured and just wasn't good enough 2 years ago. So that's what's going to win you those last 2 games. Because you can get the first game, the Niners have a roster talented enough, the quarterback's just average, right? They've proven it before. Back in 19, hell, Purdy was better than average, but Jimmy 2 years ago, even in the second round, you don't have to have great quarterback play. But once you get to the cream of the crop, as March Madness right around the corner, the Final Four, it's quarterback play. And I'm not saying Cousins is that guy, but, relative to what their options are, given if Purdy is injured, they would definitely, to me, they pull the trigger if they have the opportunity to get him, because they don't have an opportunity to, there's not other opportunities, right? Like Matt Stafford, they own $57 million. We're recording this on the 9th, the 17th. $57 million become guaranteed. It has a little bit of a Gary Payton, the second vibe, a little bit like, remember the Padres traded an injured guy and they got in trouble? Or maybe it was the Cardinals, but it was like the Cardinals, Padres did a trade and it was like, you already knew he was hurt. Like, hey guys, we all literally know the guy was hurt. You were talking about it last year. His elbow's fucked up. You're not just souring on him because like, oh, he had a rough season. Like, it's clear what's going on, because you could roll it back. If you got Matt Stafford with other guys, you can be competitive. He's won with Alliance. So if you got Sean McVay, like, to me, McVay is already kind of soured on the guy. That's what it feels like. Like, I think this is over because they're not a general manager led operation. Sean McVay's leading the charge, and the Cardinals are fucked, because you would have said a couple years ago, the Cardinals, listen, whether you love Kyler or not, he's a very talented guy. He gave the Niners fits. He gave the division fits. Now the contract, I saw, what's his name from Washington, the corner, Murphy. He's a free agent, Byron Murphy. They drafted 33rd, overall 4 years ago. And he's been a solid player. Might get like $18 million on the open market. Well, they can't afford to keep him. Why? Because they're paying the quarterback a bunch of money. Like, the guys are going to leave. Beacham, the big offensive tackle, must be a free agent, because I saw that he said on local radio in Arizona that he needs to grow up and be a man about Kyler. So there's all this like unquantifiable stuff that like has always been simmering, like the way they think about him.
Beacham was like the veteran guy when they had the Amazon the other day, was like coaching up the young guys.
And he was eating the popcorn, remember, and almost had a heart attack or whatever.
Yeah.
The guy that moved me in, set up my televisions, has moved him several times, loves him. Like, he's a high character, high level guy. And that video with the popcorn was fantastic. So like the character stuff's a question mark with the highest paid guy. And then he's legitimately just hurt, right? Like injured, knee ripped, which is his whole separate problem.
Knee ripped, has a questionable work ethic. So that scares you in terms of rehab.
Yeah. If anything, you're just hoping like genetic freak. Hopefully he just figures it out. Right. Because the one thing you would say, well, Adrian Peterson was a genetic freak. He ended up playing until he was 40. I think that represents like, I think Adrian Peterson worked pretty hard when it came to football, working out and lifting and staying in shape.
Yeah.
So those two teams, I don't think Stafford's going to be tradable, but what if they know like he's kind of like a glued together human being? Because I actually view the Seattle, like you said, the Niners play him well. They're not like a threat, but I think they are by far the most like competent number 2. Like, I'd probably pick Seattle right now to make the playoffs. It's like a 7-6 seed. Like, they're going to be right there.
They have
like
the highest
9-10
floor.
win
That
team.
would be another way to say it, I think. I think they have the highest floor of those teams. Maybe the Rams have a higher ceiling, maybe, if everything's healthy, but I agree with you. I think the Seahawks have the higher floor than the Rams or the Cardinals. I mean, McVay went to the Super Bowl with Goff and changed his mind very quickly. Now, he didn't win it, and Goff is not Stafford. Maybe part of thinking about retirement was McVay trying to figure out how are we going to fix this problem? And the problem does get easier to manage if you're able to change quarterbacks, right? Or if Matthew Stafford suddenly becomes really healthy.
Yeah, which clearly they know he probably won't.
Yes.
But the division last year, Niners swept the division. So the division wasn't a problem with the quarterback trio. I guess Trey ended up not. He started against Seattle, but he got injured in that game. So they won the 6 games was essentially Jimmy and Purdy, right? So that's not like, even if they get knocked off, like that's not going to be the problem. They're going to get judged by how they play the Eagles. Let's say the Giants improve a little bit. That might be a playoff game. The Cowboys, if somehow you're able to get through, the Bengals, the Chiefs, like that. That's who they got to beat.
Then. So can you beat the Eagles with Kirk Cousins, or the Chiefs, or the Bills?
I mean, that would be a better option than Trey Lance right now.
Yeah, because I think the answer is on this team, yes.
In 2023, maybe he develops in time, but as we're sitting here right now, coming off an ankle injury.
Oh, and Trey, yeah. What I mean, though, is like with Kirk, with this Niners team around him, maybe he can beat those teams. Maybe you can win the division with Trey Lance, right? Maybe you can, like given everything you just described. If you did it with Garoppolo and Purdy, now maybe those two guys are better than Trey. That's also, at this point, you'd say they are. They have, without question, been more productive players than Trey Lance. Purdy and Garoppolo, right? So, So, the point is, like, it would just be a major failure if you don't find a way to win the division. But it might also be a failure even if you do win the division, and you've been knocking on this Super Bowl door for a while now. Clock's ticking. Team's only getting more expensive. All these players are in their prime.
Agreed.
So let's you tell me on Friday that Tommy John surgery happens. All of a sudden, we're all here yucking it up, like, oh, Kirk Cousins, not that thing again. Oh, Lamar Jackson. If Brock Purdy gets Tommy John surgery on Friday, there's not a phone call that John Lynch won't make to try and solve that problem at quarterback, right?
Totally agree.
All right, we're going to go talk about, if you're watching this live, YouTube, we got a Lamar Jackson. We're going to talk about the Lamar aspect of this coming up in just a second. Meet us there.